video is a wrap-up of all that we've talked about with parabolas. We're going to talk about vertex form and standard form, how to find the vertex, the axis of symmetry, the x-intercepts, and the y-intercepts. We'll start with vertex form. And in vertex form, it should be pretty easy to find the vertex. So we'll start with the vertex. The -2 here tells us if it's moved right or left. Since it's a -2, it's moved 2 to the right. Remember, it moves opposite the direction that you think. The -3 means that it's moved down 3 because it moves the direction you think it does. So if we move to the right 2 and down 3, we're down here at 2, -3. The axis of symmetry we know goes through the vertex. And we know that it's a vertical line. Because it's a vertical line, it has to have the equation x equals, and it's got to have the same x as the vertex because it's going to go right through the vertex. So our axis of symmetry for this one is going to be x equals 2. Next, let's find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is on the y-axis, so we know that x needs to equal 0. So we're going to take our equation, y equals x minus 2 squared minus 3, and we're going to substitute in a 0 for our x. That will give us our y-intercept. So 0 minus 2 squared minus 3. 0 minus 2 is -2, squared is 4, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So we have a y-intercept of 1. So now we know that our parabola is going to hit the y-axis right there. The last thing we can do is to find our x-intercepts. The x-intercepts are where y is equal to 0. This is going to take a little bit more work than the other. So we're going to start with our equation, y equals x minus 2 squared minus 3, and this time we're going to substitute a 0 in for y. We want to solve for x, so we isolate x by isolating what's squared by adding 3 to both sides. Once that's done, we have the squared part isolated, so we can take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. So plus or minus the square root of 3 is equal to x minus 2. Then we can add 2 to both sides. And 2 plus or minus the square root of 3 is equal to x. If we want to know those as decimals, we plug it into our calculator. 2 plus the square root of 3 is about 3.7. 2 minus the square root of 3 is about 0.3. So those are the two places on the graph that it hits the x-axis. 3.7 is going to be somewhere in here. 0.3 is going to be somewhere in there. We can finish off our graph because we know for this one that a is 1. So it's the same shape as the parent function. So we can start at the vertex and go over 1 and up 1, over 2 and up 4. And that gives us our shape there. And that's all from vertex form. Now, let's talk about standard form. In standard form, finding the vertex is a little more difficult. We actually have to find the axis of symmetry first, because we have a formula for the axis of symmetry. And that was x equals -b over 2a. So we're going to plug in 4 for our b and 1 for our a. So -4 over 2 times 1 is -2. So the axis of symmetry is x equals -2. So we know that our axis of symmetry is over here this time, and that the vertex lies somewhere on it. So we're going to take our initial equation, y equals x squared plus 4x minus 5, and we're going to plug in a -2 for x. And then we're going to simplify. -2 squared is 4. 4 times -2 is -8 minus 5 is negative 9. So our vertex is negative 2, negative 9. It's all the way down here. Negative 2, negative 9. Now we can find the x-intercepts and the y-intercepts. Let's start with the y-intercept because it's usually a little bit easier. The y-intercept we know is when x equals 0. So let's take our equation, y equals x squared plus 4x minus 5, and plug in a 0 for x. Well, that's going to give us 0 squared is 0, plus 4 times 0 is 0, minus 5 is negative 5. So our y-intercept is negative 5. So I can go ahead and add that to my graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the last thing we're going to do is find the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts are where y equals 0. So we're going to take our original equation, y equals x squared plus 4x minus 5, and we're going to substitute a 0 in for y. That way we know it's sitting on the x-axis. When it's in standard form, we can't use the square root method that we used with vertex form. We have to factor it. So we're going to go ahead and factor this. X and x. We want factors of 5, 1 and 5 that add to give us positive 4. So it's going to be negative 1 and positive 5. And then we say, what value of x makes x plus 1 0? Well, if x is 1, 1 minus 1 would give me 0, so that works. What value of x makes this expression 0? Negative 5, because negative 5 plus 5 equals 0. So our x-intercepts are positive 1 and negative 5. Positive 1 and negative 5. And we can finish off this graph using standard. It's the same shape as the parent function because that a was 1. So from the vertex, over 1 and up 1, over 2 and up 4. We've got the shape of our parabola there. Once we're done with this, we can check both of these using our calculator. We can graph them and look and see if all of our parts are correct and see if it matches what we've got. That's it.
XOXO, Lily and Phoebe!